You see me walking down the street and I start to cry each time we meet. Walk on by. Walk on by.
So what do you got for us today?
Well, today I wanted to talk about kind of some of my personal experience. You know, I work at 6th and Congress, which is right in the center of downtown Austin, and it's kind of a hub of activity. But we have proselytizers down there. And they're often down there handing out tracts, and there's a particular church that comes down on Wednesdays, and they're there and they have their fire and brimstone, and most people walk on by, and that was the reason for the song. But and you can train yourself to not hold out your hand when someone's giving something to you. So you can you can not accept the tract. You know, there's no reason to be impolite to such folks. I mean, they're down there exercising their free speech rights, and that's perfectly okay and perfectly fine, and that's part of what makes our country great. But why are they there? Well, they're there to give you a problem and to sell you a cure to that problem. So the problem is that you're an evil, wretched, sinful person, and you're going to be tortured in hell. And the cure is that they're going to they're going to try to get you to join their church so you can be saved, and these sorts of things. So that's what they're there for. And so one question to ask is, are they effective? Are they good at doing that? And the answer is really no. I don't think they're very effective at getting people in their church. They're kind of taking an approach like spam, where they're trying to get the message out to as many people at once, and if one or two people join, then it makes their effort worthwhile. But generally, people know why they're there. People know that what they're selling is religion, and they either have a religion or they don't need it, and so most people aren't buying. Most people aren't doing it. So, if they were there with a real solution or useful knowledge, then why would they sort of be peddling it on the street corner? Why wouldn't it be sort of be common knowledge or something that everybody would realize was something good? And the answer is that it's false. What they're selling is false. The fact that the sky is blue doesn't need a marketing committee, doesn't need people down, pushing out pamphlets. And so, and if there was a God, there would be no debate. There would be no need for all these different religions. Everybody would just say, well, okay, well, whatever. That's just part of our fact of life. So most Christians know that proselytization works best with a captive audience. That's one of the big problems down there, is they don't have a captive audience. People can walk on by. So preferably, you want to have not only a captive audience, but an audience in need. And so the title of today's topic is, Jesus loves a captive audience. And why is that? And so I claim that the need for a captive audience is so that you can get this message across to people who are basically unreceptive to it, don't have a need for it, and don't really want it. And so, and by doing that, you're able to, potentially bring into bear some other things like religious or emotional manipulation and these sorts of things. So they're doing this because what they're selling has no real value. Reason must be sabotaged, and in a weird way, the seller, the people promoting this stuff, benefit more than the buyer. For the religious leaders selling this stuff, they're getting their livelihood paid for, and for the followers, they're getting kudos within their church, or they're getting extra brownie points that are going to send them to heaven or whatever. And so a captive audience is more easily. A needy captive audience is more easily manipulated. I would like to talk about a couple of different ways in which religions, especially Christianity, uses captive audiences. One is by manipulating social protocols, and I'll talk about that. A related one is ceremony, and using ceremony to have a captive audience. Co-opting institutions, and finally manipulating desperate situations. So social customs. Well, if you're exchanging pleasantries on the street, well, people tend to use that to pass out a tract. These people are friendly for a reason, because they want to give you their religious tract, right? Or if you're answering a guest at the door, generally you want to be kind of kind and open and receptive to someone coming to your door and being hospitable, but often these people are there to do a marketing spiel. They're there as missionaries to promote their religion. The Mormons do that quite a bit, and the Jehovah's Witnesses are very big into going door to door. The pleasantry of chatting with coworkers is sometimes used for witnessing. Having a play date with your kids and other kids often involves them in getting shuffled off to somebody else's church. I've even talked to some people who have written the TV show where they were involved with group therapy for divorce, and that was co-opted for proselytization, for a prayer. Let me talk a little bit about ceremony. And pretty much every ceremony in the United States is co-opted to push religion. Pretty much. It's an overstatement, I'll admit. But you know, if you're having a birth, you know, or you're having a baptism, you know, birth is eventually followed by a baptism. It's a ceremony to indoctrinate, but bind the child to the church through the parents. And growing up, you have confirmations, which is a purely religious ceremony. You have graduations, which are often co-opted for the sense of, you know, giving off prayer. Marriage ceremonies are definitely big times to proselytize. You know, go raise kids for the church. That's just, and death, funerals are another big one. I went to a funeral recently where, you know, half of the funeral was about you need God. It was a big advertisement for God.
Because someday you'll be in this box.
Someday you'll be in this box. Well, you know, God isn't involved with anything. God isn't involved with births. God isn't involved with growing up. God isn't getting married. He's not dying. So, you know, God, in my opinion, is just a parasite on these things and these ceremonies. So, whenever you have a speech or government action, there's also always some sort of ceremony, like the swearing-in ceremony. You know, the Rehnquist, or not Rehnquist, the Roberts, the Chief Justice, had to stick under God in there. That had to be stuck in there. So anyway, so anytime there's a time for solemnification, or there's a rite or something that we tend to see co-opting there. We tend to see religions being proselytized.
Ian? Is it Ian?
Yes, am I on?
You're on.
One place where Jesus loves a captive audience is at a hospital or some sort.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You know, I didn't even put that on my list, but that's a great example.
When I was sick with a really bad disease, one time a social worker came in and I said, I wish I didn't have this or something like that, or it's just kind of bad or something like that. And she said, oh, if you believe in Jesus, Jesus will heal me and for you and stuff like that.
I sympathize because, you know, somebody's pretty vulnerable if they're lying there in bed and they're in pain and they're wondering whether they're going to die or whatever. Maybe they just don't even know what's wrong. You know, that's pretty scary in itself. And to have all this, you know, religion kind of thrown at you at that point is, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good example, and thanks a lot for calling in with that example, Ian.
All right,
I
bye.
start to cry each time we meet. Walk on.